You're not tired because you work too much. That's the lie. You're tired because your brain never shut off. You end your workday, but mentally, you never leave. And that's why sleeping more doesn't fix it. You wake up already drained, already behind, already in low battery mode, like your life only exists between obligations. Here's the uncomfortable psychology most people don't want to hear. Your evenings are silently training your brain to stay exhausted. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing what feels normal. Collapsing, scrolling, zoning out, waiting for the weekend to feel human again. And over time, that pattern kills mental focus, discipline, and any real sense of personal growth. But what if the problem was never work itself? What if the real fix lives in a few small after-work decisions that rewire your mindset, restore productivity, and give you back control of your time, without forcing motivation or extreme routines? Stay with me, because once you see what's actually draining you, you can't unsee it. Here's something most people don't realize. Your brain still expects a transition between roles. When work ended and the commute disappeared, your nervous system lost its off switch, so you carry work stress straight into your personal life without noticing. That's why your mindset stays stuck in work mode even hours later. This isn't a motivation problem, it's a neurological gap. And without closing that loop, self-development stalls before the evening even starts. Psychology shows that transitions matter more than rest itself. A short, intentional walk, 10 minutes, no phone, no podcasts, sends a clear signal to your brain. One chapter is closing. Think of it as a ritual, not exercise. You're not trying to be productive, you're recalibrating mental focus. People who do this consistently report better time management and emotional regulation, even on chaotic days. Small habit, disproportionate impact. You can do this before work and after work. Before, it prepares your discipline. After, it releases pressure. Walk the same block every day. Breathe slower. Notice physical sensations. That sensory input grounds your nervous system and restores a sense of control. It's one of those life lessons that feels almost too simple until you try it. And once you do, you realize how much energy was leaking during that missing transition. Here's the insight most people miss. This isn't about walking, it's about reclaiming identity. You're teaching your brain when to perform and when to be human again. Without that boundary, productivity bleeds into exhaustion. And once you feel that first mental release after the walk, something else becomes obvious. The real enemy isn't work itself. It's what happens the moment you collapse onto the couch without intention. Once the fake commute ends, most people make the same silent mistake. They collapse onto the couch and disappear. Not physically, mentally. Psychology calls this a state of learned inertia. Your brain interprets the couch as permission to shut down completely, not to recover. That's why you feel heavier, foggier, and somehow less rested afterward. This isn't laziness. It's your nervous system choosing the fastest path to comfort over personal growth. Here's the reframe that changes everything. The couch isn't the problem. The timing is. If you sit down before doing one intentional action, your brain locks into passive mode. A simple rule breaks that pattern. Do one small, deliberate thing first. Wash a single dish. Stretch for 2 minutes. Write 3 lines in a notebook. This tiny action restores agency, sharpens mindset, and prevents your evening from being hijacked by autopilot. What's powerful here is the psychology of momentum. Once you prove to yourself that you can still act after work, your identity shifts. You're no longer the exhausted version of you. You're someone who still chooses. That's discipline in its most humane form. Over time, this habit improves productivity without forcing effort. You stop fighting your brain and start guiding it instead. And here's the hidden benefit. When you finally sit down, rest actually works. Your body relaxes because your mind isn't drowning in guilt or unfinished signals. That's how you learn how to live better after work, not just survive it. But once you break couch inertia, another question shows up naturally. If your body responds this strongly to intention, what happens when you start using sound to guide your emotional state? Most people think music is just background noise. Psychology disagrees. Sound is one of the fastest ways to shift emotional state because it bypasses logic and speaks directly to the nervous system. After work, your brain doesn't need stimulation. It needs recalibration. When you let random noise decide your mood, you give up control of your mindset. And that's why evenings often feel chaotic even when nothing is happening. The fix is simple but intentional. A post-work playlist with a purpose. Start with slower, calmer tracks to downshift stress. Think lo-fi, instrumental jazz, or ambient music. Then gradually move into something slightly more upbeat. This progression mirrors how your brain naturally resets. It's not about hype. It's about guiding emotional chemistry. Over time, this ritual trains mental focus and emotional regulation without conscious effort. Here's where it gets interesting. Repetition turns music into a psychological anchor. When your brain hears those first tracks, it learns work is over. That's classical conditioning working in your favor. Some people use artists like Tycho, Nils Fromm, or instrumental movie soundtracks. Others prefer acoustic playlists or slow electronic beats. The genre doesn't matter. Consistency does. That's how productivity ends on time instead of bleeding into the night. And once sound starts shaping your state, you realize something deeper. Energy isn't just physical. It's emotional allocation. Music helps you reclaim that bandwidth, but it also exposes an uncomfortable truth. If a playlist can restore you this fast, then maybe the real issue isn't fatigue. It's how much of your best energy you're still donating to work long after the workday ends. Here's a hard truth most high-functioning people avoid. Work doesn't drain you. Overinvestment does. Your brain doesn't know when to stop caring unless you teach it. So you replay conversations, decisions, emails, and unfinished tasks long after you've logged off. That mental overhang quietly steals your evenings. This isn't ambition. It's misdirected discipline. And over time, it erodes personal growth instead of supporting it. Psychology shows that perfectionism is often disguised as responsibility. You tell yourself you're being professional, but your nervous system hears constant threat. The result? Mental focus never comes back online for your own life. A simple shift helps. Decide in advance what good enough looks like at work. Not careless, contained. When you define that boundary, your mindset stops looping and your energy finally has somewhere else to go. Here's a practical example. Before ending your workday, write down the next clear action for tomorrow. One sentence. That's it. This gives your brain closure. It reduces background anxiety and frees cognitive space. High performers do this instinctively, not to work more, but to protect time management and emotional bandwidth. That single habit separates sustainable productivity from chronic exhaustion. Once you stop donating your best energy to work, something unexpected happens. You realize how little you've been reserving for yourself. Evenings start to feel like your time again. But reclaiming energy creates a new challenge, because when your time finally matters, you'll need to protect it. And that leads directly to the next uncomfortable skill most people never learn: saying no without carrying guilt home with you. Most people don't struggle with time management. They struggle with emotional boundaries. Every unnecessary yes steals energy from something that actually matters. Your brain reads obligation as pressure, even when you agree politely. That's why evenings feel crowded, even when nothing is scheduled. This isn't kindness, it's untrained discipline. And without boundaries, self-development quietly stalls. Psychology makes this clear. Guilt is a learned response, not a moral compass. You were trained to associate saying no with rejection, conflict, or being difficult. But in reality, saying no is how you protect mental focus and personal growth. The trick isn't being harsh, it's being clear. Simple phrases like, "I can't commit to that right now," or "that doesn't fit my current priorities," work because they close the loop without explanation. Here's the part most people miss. Over-explaining weakens boundaries. The more you justify, the more your brain feels responsible for other people's reactions. Strong boundaries are calm, brief, and repeatable. This frees cognitive energy and restores confidence. Over time, this habit rewires your mindset. You stop reacting and start choosing. That's how discipline becomes sustainable instead of exhausting. Once you stop leaking energy through guilt-driven yeses, your evenings open up. And when they do, another uncomfortable truth shows up. Even with protected time, most people still feel drained. Why? Because they mistake stimulation for rest. And that's exactly where the next shift becomes critical. Learning how to give your brain real recovery instead of endless scrolling disguised as relaxation. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Scrolling isn't rest. It's stimulation disguised as recovery. Your brain stays alert, reactive, and slightly anxious the entire time. That's why you can spend 40 minutes on your phone and still feel mentally exhausted. Dopamine spikes don't restore energy, they fragment it. And when this becomes your default after work, your mental focus never truly resets. Psychology explains why this happens. Your brain seeks novelty when it's tired because novelty feels easier than effort. But novelty without depth keeps your nervous system on standby. Real rest does the opposite. It lowers input. Activities like reading a physical book, writing a short journal entry, or simply sitting in silence for 5 minutes actually calm neural activity. That's when recovery starts. That's how personal growth sneaks in quietly. Here's a practical swap that works. Instead of reaching for your phone, try one of these. Read 10 pages of something grounding: Atomic Habits, Man's Search for Meaning, or even fiction. Write 3 sentences about your day, or step outside and breathe slowly for 2 minutes. None of this is dramatic, but these actions tell your brain it's safe to power down. That's real self-development in practice. Once you experience true mental rest, something shifts. You realize fatigue wasn't the problem, misdirected recovery was. And when your brain finally feels clear, a new desire naturally appears. You want your evenings to mean something again, not in a productive way, in a human way. That's when the final piece clicks into place, having something small, intentional, and joyful to look forward to at the end of the day. Most people don't feel drained because they're doing too much. They feel drained because nothing belongs to them anymore. When every evening looks the same, your brain stops releasing anticipation chemicals. No novelty, no ownership, no reward. Psychology shows that anticipation alone can restore energy faster than rest itself. Without it, days blur together, and personal growth quietly loses meaning. The fix doesn't require big plans or motivation. It requires intention. One small activity placed deliberately at the end of your day changes how your brain experiences time. A new recipe once a week. A short walk with music you love. One episode of a show you save only for evenings. This isn't indulgence, it's psychological design. You're teaching your brain that life doesn't end when work ends. Here's what makes this powerful. Anticipation reshapes your mindset hours before it happens. Even a simple plan gives your nervous system something to move toward, not just recover from. That sense of direction improves discipline, emotional regulation, and even productivity the next day. It's one of those life lessons nobody teaches you. Energy isn't just restored by stopping, but by choosing. And once your evenings feel intentional again, something subtle changes. You stop living for the weekend. You stop postponing yourself. You begin to understand how to live better inside ordinary days. At that point, the real question isn't what you'll do after work, it's who you're becoming in those hours. And that realization sets the stage for everything else we need to talk about next. Let's be clear about one thing. Exhaustion after work is not inevitable. You're not broken, lazy, or just getting older. What's draining you isn't the day, it's how you end it. Real rest isn't doing nothing. It's doing the right things that actually reset your brain, restore mental focus, and give meaning back to your time. And the hours after work, that's where your real life is being decided. So here's the challenge. Don't try to change everything. Pick one fix. Just one. Take a 10-minute walk. Delay the couch. Protect one boundary. Replace scrolling with real rest. Give yourself something to look forward to tonight. Small actions compound faster than motivation ever will. That's how self-development becomes real. That's how discipline stops feeling heavy. That's how you learn how to live better without waiting for weekends or vacations. Now ask yourself honestly, which habit are you starting today? Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. Drop it in the comments. Saying it out loud creates accountability. And if this video helped you see why your energy keeps leaking, you need the next layer too. Understanding evenings is powerful. But mastering your mind is what makes it permanent. That's why I made a video called How I Finally Mastered Myself Using This 4-Phase Reset. Watch it next, because clarity without structure fades fast. Stay quiet, stay sharp, stay in progress.